everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Krash Kourse Metal Show. I'm your host, Trevor Crash Knight, and we got with us again a very special guest, our buddy, Tim Durling. What's going on, brother?
Hey, Krash, how you doing? It's good to be here once again talking about another one of the bands that got away.
Yes, and that's the thing. We could probably make 100 episodes on, late '80s, early '90s on bands that got away, but today though we are going to be doing Baton Rouge from Louisiana, strangely enough. Originally from Louisiana. Kind of brought this up initially was on our previous video that we did together, Blue Murder. I will put the link in the description as well to that video. But what brought that up was Kelly Keeling, the lead vocalist for Baton Rouge. He did some work with John Sykes, and he sang on a song or two on Blue Murder's second album. And we just kind of thought, hey, I don't see a lot of people talking about Baton Rouge. Let's make a video. Let's do it. So, Tim, if you want to kind of give a little bit of a background, like your upbringing, I guess, with Baton Rouge, go right ahead.
Well, it's interesting because I don't really know anything much about the formation of this group. I do know, like, they put their debut album out in 1990, Shake Your Soul, on Atlantic Records. And I think Atlantic Records, more than any other label, signed too many bands. They signed everybody. And I mean, we could go on and on. I mean, there was Tattoo Rodeo and Sons of Angels and Electric Angels. Damn. And help me out here, Hurricane Alice.
All three bands that are four bands now that you just named. Amazing outputs. Tattoo Radio. Oh my gosh, good stuff.
Especially that Skin album. That's something we could talk. That second one they put up. But I just think that there were too many bands competing for the same, so many radio slots or video slots. It got to be too much. Now, we've talked about this, I think, in the last episode. I hated the whole grunge era. I wasn't into it.
Your music's bad and you should feel bad.
And you're talking to someone that lived through it. I graduated from high school in 1992, and believe me, it was not cool to like bands like Baton Rouge. But I never cared about that. But I'm like, it was a very, very real distinction with rock music. But Baton Rouge are one of the bands that I really think, had they came out with they might have been around, but had they put their first album out 2 or 3 years earlier, it could have been a very different story, because this album, Shake Your Soul, is just full of memorable, hooky, catchy hard rock songs, very, very commercial in nature. Really, there's nothing on this album that couldn't conceivably have been a single. There's nothing that's all that heavy on it. It's got some fantastic ballads on it. Right. And the one song that I heard on, it used to be a syndicated show on Saturday nights called Pirate Radio. Mm-hmm. And Lon Friend hosted it at one point, but somebody else hosted it before him, and I can't remember who, but I listened to that quite faithfully. And I remember hearing the song called Walks Like a Woman with really, really good lead singer that reminded me of David Coverdale.
Right. And
I didn't know who it was. It wasn't one that they came off of and said, hey, Baton Rouge. They didn't say who it was. And a little while later, someone had the cassette. I borrowed that and listened to it. And this was like late 91. I was blown away. And I actually went to my local record store, and they had the CD, which is kind of surprising now that I think about it.
Yeah.
And bought this. And I listened to this so much. Like, this is an album that's in here. I've memorized it. Now, few key players in this, not so much in the band itself, aside from Kelly Keeling, who's fantastic vocalist, but the guy that produced this first album and figures in on most of the songwriting, like all the songs, is a guy by the name of Jack Ponty. Mm-hmm. Now, people that are really aware of the early history of Bon Jovi will know the name Jack Ponty. Jack and John were, I think, bandmates at one point. They wrote songs together. I know for a fact that the song Shot Through the Heart, not You Give Love a Bad Name, Shot Through the Heart, that's on the first Bon Jovi album, was a co-write with Jack Ponti. And I want to say there's one other song on there. Maybe it's Breakout. I don't know, but
Okay.
I could be wrong with that. I know Shot Through the Heart was co-written by Jack Ponti, but those two go way back. And Jack Ponti had a band called Surgeon, not as in like a doctor, but as like SURGIN apostrophe. Okay. And they had an album on EMI in '85. I've never heard it. And I guess they also do the song Shot Through the Heart on there, which is, he co-wrote it, so it's his right. And if you look at the front cover, he actually kind of looked like John. He's got the head, he's got the long hair, the headband, so you can kind of tell where he's coming from musically. And I don't know if he discovered this band and decided to take them under his wing, but and he co-wrote a lot of songs with a guy named Vic Pepe, or Pepe anyway. Which I don't see those names on albums a lot. I see Jack Ponti's name once in a while, as a songwriter. Like if anybody's into the band Keel, Jack Ponti wrote their song Somebody's Waiting. He wrote that song, which was a single for them. Now, I think this might be one of those cases where not all of the band members played on this, because there are some additional members listed. Like there's a couple of keyboard players. Couple of guys on drums and percussion that are listed that are notable. Joe Franco. Now, Joe Franco played on Twisted Sister's Love Is for Suckers album.
Yes.
And he also played on when Dee Snider had Widowmaker. He was the drummer in that band. And also a guy by the name of Frankie LaRocca, which I've seen. I think he's a studio drummer. So I don't know if Corky McClellan actually plays on this. I don't know. But the credits in this, like, they thank everybody under the sun here. The credits are very, very detailed. And it seemed like there was a lot of people that momentum behind this band coming out. Now, unfortunately, like I said, I just think the market was oversaturated. Now, Walks Like a Woman got to number 22 on the mainstream Billboard mainstream rock chart. And that was the only single they had that you know, that's their signature song, I guess, if you could call it. And it's a fantastic, it's a catchy, like a mid-tempo kind of bluesy. I'm not even sure how you describe it. It's just really good melodic hard rock.
It is. Like, we'll try to answer that throughout the show here, but it's hard to really explain what this band is or what they sound like in the field of hair metal, you know, of that time.
I would say that if you were, you know, if you're a fan of late 80s Whitesnake, I'm not saying Kelly Keeling is a David Coverdale clone,
right?
But he's got the same rasp, he's got the same bluesiness. Makes me wonder if even subconsciously, if that's why John Sykes sought him out. Makes you wonder, right?
Yeah, quite possible. It is quite possible.
But a great vocalist, like he's just one of those guys. He opens his mouth and sounds good. I don't know about now, but on this album, like, it's just one good song after another. And they're like I said, they do really good ballads. Like on here, there's It's About Time, Young Hearts, There Was a Time, subtitled The Storm. That could have been a hit single.
Yeah,
I think.
I agree.
Earlier. That had totally had what it took to. And so did Walks Like a Woman. I mean, Walks Like a Woman could have been a hit. And I'm not comparing song-wise, but in an era where, like, you know, songs like Cherry Pie and Love in an Elevator and, you know, 17, and like, it's right in there. It's right in that wheelhouse. It's not something that you have to listen to a few times to absorb. It's like, if you're into this kind of music, if you like early Bon Jovi, if you like Winger, if you like, you know, if you thought maybe, hey, wouldn't it be cool if Bad Company or Foreigner were a little heavier? You know, if you like Damn Yankees, like this is right there. I mean, you know, there's just, unfortunately, you know, it didn't really click, you know.
To jump in real quick, the only thing I could explain that would be like how you were saying Winger, Cherry Pie, Warrant. Baton Rouge is a little bit of a rich man's hair metal band.
I
You
think
know,
so. Yeah, they had really high. This wasn't an album of. Okay, my opinion is that in this period, let's say 90 to 93,
mhm.
really 90 to 92, when the labels were still signing all these bands, and putting the albums out, doing and spending like the hundreds of thousands of dollars on videos that got played once.
$1 jillion.
Sir, that's not a number.
Oh, in that case, 50 million.
A lot of those groups had one or two good songs, really.
Yeah.
This band had good song after good song after good song. Like they had the makings of, a really solid career. If they, like I said, if they'd started out a few years earlier, they could have had a solid run of maybe two or three big albums like Cinderella.
Yeah.
Or a band like that,
I want to ask, just based off the debut here, like how we're talking about singles, Walks Like a Woman is a great song. I agree. But like you said, when you stack it up against like Cherry Pie or 17, those type of songs and singles that were out at that time, it's not as flashy for the casual music.
Exactly. Yeah. And another thing that it's funny because I don't ever remember seeing videos by them.
Yeah.
It's only like years later in the advent of YouTube, it came up in my feed, Baton Rouge Walks Like a Woman. It's like, I've never actually seen the video to this before. What a stupid video. Have you seen it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I saw it.
It's absolutely ridiculous. Like it's literally somebody
in a high
I don't
chair.
know who directed the video. They said, let's take every line of this song and make it literal.
Exactly. That's exactly correct. 100%. Because the main thing that I remember about that video, strangely, is the woman in a high chair dressed like a baby. Like,
yes,
it's like, okay, I guess that's okay. But when you do,
I remember the line satin sheets caress you in the night, and there's literally like people in sheets, and they're like, and unless the idea, I always try to think, okay, what were they thinking? What were they thinking? This is Atlantic Records. You know what I mean? Like this is big bucks, and they want return on their investment, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
What were they thinking? And I wonder if they, there could have been a certain amount of foresight saying, hey, you know what? A lot of these videos are basically all the same. Let's just do something ridiculous, and maybe this will stand out. But if that was the case, they didn't quite pull it off. It
might have backfired.
It wasn't funny per se. You didn't chuckle at it, and it doesn't fit the song.
No,
they'd have been better off doing like the typical band at an empty warehouse, with whatever, just show them playing the song. Like you're right. They weren't flashy and they weren't glammed up.
Mm-hmm.
The strength was in the songwriting. So give them the song. Don't distract them with any stupid visuals. And I'm not saying that deep sixed them, but it certainly didn't help them. And I don't even know if they had any other videos off of this album, but I certainly didn't see any.
Yeah, not on this album, no.
No.
I think they only had 2 overall, and the other one was Price of Love, I think, off the second.
Okay. But we'll get and that's kind of odd too, because again, it's Atlantic Records. Like it's one of the biggest rock labels.
Yeah.
And
they had
one
Rat
video
at the time too. So
Rat, Skid Row, Mr. Big, and then some band called Led Zeppelin. I mean, they were the rock label. But I think maybe it was back then. They say, look, you get one video.
Yeah.
Because we've got 20 other bands, and their albums are all coming out this month, and they all want videos too. So, it's not like the days. It's not like Bon Jovi and Def Leppard where you go 4, 5, 6 singles deep, and they all had videos. So, because they could have come back with one of those ballads. They could have released something like Young Hearts or Melanie or Big Trouble or Doctor, the first song.
Well, I was gonna say, I was gonna say.
I got a funny story for you, Krash, about the song Doctor.
Yeah, go ahead.
And we were talking off before we started recording about, like, unfortunately, this album didn't do very well. But there must have been a thought that it would, because they made too many copies. Because within 3 years, I remember seeing this CD in its long box in dump bins in department stores everywhere. And I will tell you this, I'm kind of glad I came across it, because this CD, for some reason, I must have not been careful handling it. It got so the first song, Doctor, would skip on me. So I ended up replacing it with one of those CDs. Now, the CDs all had the big cuts through them.
Yeah.
So I just replaced the CD and kept the old jewel case without any cuts in it. But what's funny is anybody that's had a CD, yeah, exactly. Anybody that's had a CD skip on them knows this feeling. Even after you replace it, you still expect the song to skip in that same spot. And I'll tell you, for people that know this album, they do it twice, but it's before the second chorus, where it goes, "I need a shot," like that. It goes, "I need," like,
oh, really?
It freezes right there, and it's like, oh. So I'm still, like, to this day, I put that on, I'm still half expecting it to skip, but it doesn't, because it's a new CD. But yeah, it was an album I listened to for a long time, like, steady. And
same here.
And actually, by the time I discovered this and bought this, they had already put out their second album.
Oh, okay.
Which you held up. I don't know if you want to go to that yet, or if we want to.
Yeah, I'll just say a couple things here on the debut, because this is a very personal album for me too, because it's been like I was like 15 when I bought this in high school, about, I guess, 15 years ago. So and man, I heard, I think the first song I heard was "Walk Like a Woman" on YouTube. I'm like, damn, this is good. So I went and bought it for like $5 off eBay or something ungodly cheap. And I was like, holy shit, this is really, really good. And now, going back to the single though here, what would you, other than "Walks Like a Woman," what would you put out instead of that? "Doctor" or "Big Trouble"? Like, where?
Well, I wouldn't have put anything out instead of it. I'd have just done a better video for it. I think that was their best commercial shot.
Okay.
I definitely think it would. No, I have no problem with the song. I just think the video was ridiculous. And now you can look at it and laugh. But when, like, at the time, videos were such a big deal. Videos were your commercial.
Right.
You were advertising your band on MTV, and it obviously got a little bit of play because, like I said, it hit the mainstream rock chart. But it should have. I'm not saying it would have been a top 10 pop hit, but it could have hit the top 40.
Yeah, it definitely would have had some legs.
It could have been a top. It could have been like a, somewhere in the 18, 19, 20, 22 range, somewhere there in the charts, and been a song that your average radio listener would still recognize today, if things had gone right. But yeah, I think that you could have gone with just about any song off of this, and it's so accessible. The only other thing that I will say is that, "Baby's So Cool," first song on side 2 or track 7.
Yeah.
Maybe sounds a little bit too much like "Heaven's on Fire." It's a little derivative of "Heaven's on Fire." Not that that's a bad thing, but it's almost too close.
Okay, now that you say that, I'll have to re-listen to that and be like, okay, I see where you're coming from. But it is a great song.
It's a good song. It's a good song. Yeah.
But yeah,
by the time that I bought that album, the second one had come out. I'm curious though, for you, it's one thing for me to have caught onto it. How did you ever hear about this band?
Like I said, when I would just come home from school, get on the computer, look at random hair metal bands or glam metal bands, whatever.
So eventually, did this show up in your feed, or your suggested? Okay.
Basically, or even like Sleaze Rocks, I would look up like all the bands that they would list, they alphabetically, and I would just one day I would go to one band, one day I go to another band, one day I just go down the list basically, and I just look up their hit or whatever. And yeah, and that just basically it went from there. And yeah, I loved it ever since. It's certainly, and like I told you before too, like this album, or even just Baton Rouge in general, both albums. When I visualize like something from the '90s, like say an episode of the X-Files or something like that, real early '90s, I think of Baton Rouge. Like I feel like they would be listening to Baton Rouge in the background. It just sounds. It doesn't sound stale. I'm not gonna say that. It doesn't sound like '90s or late '80s, but it's just. I don't know how to explain it. It just feels.
It's
right.
not overproduced.
Yeah.
It's not overproduced. It's not a particularly. The production doesn't demand your attention, nor does it take you away from the song.
Right.
Yeah, that you raise a good point. I mean, if they'd had a song that fell into a movie soundtrack or did get played on a popular TV show like that, who knows? I mean, but again, there were too many bands that were basically doing the same thing and playing to the same audience. They all wanted the same basic audience, right?
Exactly.
I still to this day, I just think that the strength of their songwriting, they were a cut above, and they deserved a little bit, and 1990, yeah, that's late in the game, but in 1990, you still had Slaughter that had a successful debut album. You had Firehouse, successful debut album. I think Trickster's first album went gold.
Correct. Yeah.
So there was still a market for that. But although it's interesting to note, none of those three bands were on Atlantic Records, so maybe they had more priority with their record label.
Yeah, because Slaughter was what, on Capitol?
So Slaughter was on Chrysalis, which was, I think back then it was distributed by MCA, and then it switched to EMI. It was sort of a major minor label. Firehouse was on Sony, and it just went right out of my head. Who else was there? Trickster was on MCA, which didn't have a lot of hard rock bands, so they were probably a priority. So with Atlantic Records they were promoting the new bands, and they were still promoting the bands that were on their label. Like Skid Row would have been a big priority, but then they had Sleaze Bees, and Enough's Enough, and just so many, just so many different bands. I know this because not only this, but I know that for the first half of the 90s, you'd see so many CDs, like used CDs, show up, and so many of them were on Atlantic. And if this is back in the days before cell phones, like camera phones. So it would have been you could have just lined them up and taken a picture of them, because they would have all looked, basically like this on the side, right? Like just how many of these CDs. And also keep in mind, this is 1990. Rat Detonator didn't even go platinum.
No, yeah.
So it was falling off. Even the big bands. I mean, Cinderella went down, and so it's almost like a new band pretty much didn't stand much of a chance at all.
And that's it. Kind of beckons like there was some stuff that even sold in '93, like you brought up earlier, Mr. Big lead into it, that went platinum, but that had that
went platinum. It took about a year, but it went platinum. That was it.
So that's
Poison Native Tongue went gold in 1993.
I mean, there was still a little bit of a market, but
there was a little bit of a market. But in the case of a band like Poison, you think about it, 5 years earlier, they had an album sold 5 million.
Yes.
So everybody took a hit. So the small bands that hadn't got a foothold, they didn't stand a chance. But they very quickly, and maybe recognizing this, striking while the iron's hot, they very quickly followed up with the second album, Lights Out of the Playground, which both of these were like two of the very first CDs that I bought without first having them on cassette.
Okay.
And I had both of these in long boxes, and I wished I'd kept my long box.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
I don't have either of them, but neither of mine are cutouts. So this one, once again, was produced by Jack Conte. I think it's a very similar album to Shake Your Soul.
It is.
I don't think it's quite as consistently good, but it's still good. Now there is a slight lineup change. Actually, we should talk about that. So Kelly Keeling, lead vocalist. I think their main songwriter in the band was the guitar player Lance Bulin, which is not a name I recognize from anywhere else. Corky McClellan on drums, Scott Bender on bass, and keyboards and guitar by a guy named David Kremen.
Mhm.
Now, he was replaced on the second album by a guitar player named Tony Palmucci, who came from Keel.
Right.
Now, he was a late arriving member to Keel. He wasn't an original member, so he was probably a relatively younger guy. And, so there's the band on the back cover. Not terribly glammed out, you know.
Just your
Almost
basic early
could be,
90s kind of look.
Almost like maybe it's because I'm thinking Baton Rouge, almost Southern, a little Southern.
Yeah.
Like Brother Kane,
Right.
Kane, or Cry of Love. But more commercial hard rock in nature. So yeah, what do you think about this second album? I'm curious how you think it stands up to the first.
Now, it's weird because I kind of bought these similar to around the same time and digested them within the same year, I'll say, at least. Probably within the same 3 months. But initially, I always liked the debut, and I think I still do. It's so close, though. It is so close. But I think Lights Out in the Playground is a little bit more bluesier in spots. And because that's something I want to say about the debut.
Oh, yeah.
There's something about the debut. When you said bluesy, okay, yeah, Walks Like a Woman is a little bit bluesy. Does have a slight tinge to that. But the rest of the album, I don't really hear, I wouldn't consider it like a bluesy hair metal or anything.
No,
like
it's not. The blues is in his voice.
Yes, okay. All right. But now on the second album.
But yeah, there's a lot of blues on this album.
Yes.
Definitely.
Hotter Than Hell, I believe, is real bluesy. There's like at least 3 songs on here that are very, very bluesy. I think Slave to the Rhythm, the opening track, is probably out of their whole catalog. If you would give me one song to make a hit out of, it would be either Slave to the Rhythm or Price of Love. That would probably be which Price of Love
is a really good song.
It is.
And it's probably
so
the song that it sounds the most like something that's off the first album. It's interesting because I do remember because it's 5 minutes and 5 seconds on the album. That's a long, but I do remember when I first started in radio finding a Warner Music sampler, which like the record companies used to put out these monthly samplers of all the artists on their label. Sometimes it was like all rock or all country or all pop, but sometimes it was just, here's our new releases on Warner and Elektra and Atlantic, everybody on the same disc. And I do remember seeing a disc from like fall of 91 that had an edit of Price of Love on it. So they probably shaved a minute and a half off of it. But,
okay.
Yeah, but great song. I can see why they made the video for it. But again, now we're in the late 91 into 92. It's even less likely they're going to have a hit with it. I think that the other, there's an interesting song on here, which is kind of a cover, but kind of not a cover.
Mm-hmm.
But I think my favorite ballad on here is Light at the End of the Tunnel.
Okay.
Now, would it have been a hit? I don't know. But there is bluesy stuff in there. Down by the Torchlight. I mean, that just sounds bluesy. That's very Full-Time Body. That's bluesy. It's an interesting. It's good, but it's a little bit different than that first album. But yeah, do you want to talk about the song that was kind of recognizable to some people?
Certainly. If anyone's familiar with Babylon AD, 1989, their self-titled came out. And they had the song Desperate. And I
Yeah.
think well, Sam Kinison, he did a core or a line a special guest line in one of their songs on that album,
It was A
Babylon
Kid
AD.
Goes Wild.
Yes. Yep.
Wasn't
And
that
that
from a movie? Was that from
yes,
a movie?
RoboCop, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
And so yeah, he did that. And so like Babylon AD even had a lot of momentum going for
Yeah,
them with Sam Kinison and a
yeah.
movie.
That was a big deal at the time. Yeah, they
Yeah.
came out in '89, and I think they were on Arista. And
Yeah.
that first album, I that first album probably sold. I'm just guessing a couple 100,000, 250,000 copies. Like it probably sold decently.
Yeah, I don't know the number to that. But I don't even yeah, like you said, it didn't go gold or anything like
Yeah,
that.
it didn't certify, but they got a lot of. I remember reading about them at Metal Edge,
Yeah.
and that's another funny thing. I mean, I read Circus and Metal Edge faithfully back then. I never saw any articles on Baton Rouge, which is odd.
Yeah.
So it's like, how did this? How so? That's kind of something too. Like, did they not do a lot of press, or why weren't we
Just
seeing articles on this band when they were writing articles on everybody else?
yeah, what were they just badly managed? Like what was the combination here? So
Yeah, well, that's a good point. And I look at that things like that now. Who was
yeah.
their manager?
So back to the song here. They did
Desperate.
cover
Yeah.
Desperate, yes, because apparently the names escaped me, but they shared producers.
Yes.
Baton Rouge, and Babylon AD. So, and I have to say, "Desperate," the song the ballad here that they covered, awesome ballad. No matter really who sings it, whether it's Babylon AD or Baton Rouge, such a good song. Like I don't understand how either one of them didn't end up being a hit. Well, I can kind of understand Baton Rouge because I was 91, but
Yeah. Yeah.
like God, I think I like the Babylon AD version just a little bit more because it's a little bit more raw, I think. But other than that, though, like Kelly is the better singer, though. So it's certainly it's a great song. There's good ballads on here too. I kind of even consider Price of Love, back to Price of Love.
It's very mid tempo. Yeah.
You could.
very mid.
Some people could argue that that's a little bit of a ballad, and I wouldn't, kind of
Yeah.
argue that too much. But yeah, very.
So Desperate was written
digestible.
by Jack Ponte, and it says Davis. I think it's Derek Davis, who was the singer from Babylon AD. So maybe Jack Ponte produced Babylon AD.
Yeah.
But you're right, there was a connection. Yeah, and I just looked up. Their management was somebody I've never heard of.
Okay.
Jim Ricoeur for Kahane Management. And if you didn't have, like Doc McGee or Q Prime,
Yeah.
big high
someone with a little bit of merit behind them. Yeah.
Yeah, you weren't, you didn't stand much of a chance, even if you were on a major label. So yeah, these two albums came and went, and they both ended up as sadly as cutouts. But
yeah.
I will say this: you come across either of these folks, they're worth rescuing.
Oh yeah.
From the landfill. Like they're both really, really good. If if you're watching us here, you're obviously into this type of music. These are worth checking out. This you're not going to find something and go, oh yeah, but it sounds like a million other bands. I don't think it does. I think they had a sound. I think they had a sound all their own, and they had a songwriting style all their own. And they deserved a better shot than what they had. But again, they were just too late in the game getting into it. Also, I mean, coming from Louisiana, that's not exactly a hard rock center. You know what I mean? It's not like they're from LA. It's not like they're from New York. It's just, they're not from the Bay Area. Like there's no Louisiana rock scene that I can think of.
Well, and you would kind of think they would show their bluesiness a little bit more, just based on that. But that's a good testament to them though too, because like on the second album here, they do blues it up a little bit more compared to the first. But
yeah,
I like both. I like both sides. But I will say, as time goes on, Lights Out on the Playground, a little bit weaker throughout the album, because there's like Tokyo Time. I can do without that song. Vampire Kiss is
It's
just
kind of a long album too. Like it seems like it's a longer album.
It is. It's still 12 songs. And the
Yeah.
first album's 12 songs as well. But I agree with you. There's something about it, it does seem longer. I don't know what really to test that to. Just maybe because the songs throughout the album just aren't as strong. But
yeah, that's when you start. If the songs are all good, you don't notice how long
right.
the album might be. And maybe there's a little bit of confusion with the name. Maybe people would have seen that and say, what is that, a country band?
Or a
Uh,
blues
or a blues,
band,
yeah,
or,
like because this doesn't really tell you what kind of music it is.
No, it is quite strange too. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why. Like around the same time, there's a Canadian band. I don't know if you've heard of them, not called Harem Scarum.
Okay, yeah,
Great,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, great melodic rock band. Their first album has a baby doll on the cover. Like it's like weird, and they couldn't even be bothered putting something different on the back cover.
I know.
It's like,
and there was another one with a baby doll head on it. Big House. Do you know Big?
Another Canadian band, absolutely. And believe it or not, that's a Hugh Syme album cover.
Yeah.
Like there were that money was spent. You don't hire Hugh Syme if you're broke.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, it's like that's like the baby doll head sideways, and there's an outlet, and that's a weird
the
one
album's
too.
fine, but yeah, certainly it isn't changing anyone's life, for the most part.
Yeah. So that, for a long time, I thought that was it for Baton Rouge. I know, like you said, Kelly Keeling went on, sang on a couple tracks on that second Blue Murder album, Nothing But Trouble. Good album. Sang on I'm on Fire. And years later, and I can't exactly remember when I realized this thing existed, but there is a third Baton Rouge album. And kind of. It's just self-titled. And it's got the same logo. I don't really like the effect they put on this. Came out in 1997 on this one's a Japanese version on Pony Canyon, which I've seen different ones. I don't even like the font even looks cheap on it. Now, when I say kind of, it's not really the band as we knew it. It's fortunately you still get the voice of the band. You've got Kelly Keeling, but you've got Jack Ponte, who was never in the band, but he was like the sixth member, right?
Yeah.
And three other guys, which I don't know about you, I've never heard tell of. Camus Kelly or Chelly on drums, Guy Daniel on keyboards, and Pat Schick on bass.
Yeah, none of them ring a bell.
No. And somehow they give special thanks to Kevin Caveman Shirley, who was a pretty big name producer.
Okay.
Or went on to become a pretty big name producer. Now he doesn't, I don't know, he must have helped Jack with something. I don't know. Now, so this album is a bit of I don't want to say it's leftover songs, but I don't know the where these songs came from. I do know there are some good songs on here. I mean, the first track, Didn't I, is pretty classic sounding Baton Rouge. I mean, Kelly still sings really well in this album. By far, the most interesting track on here is another kind of half cover song. And I say it's a half cover song because it was co-written by Jack Ponte and Vic Pepe, who produced their first two albums. Love's a Loaded Gun.
Yep.
Which is on Alice Cooper's Hey Stupid album. Now, if you look at the credits to Hey Stupid, all of the members of Baton Rouge are credited with background vocals.
Yeah.
And I think you can definitely hear Kelly on Alice's version of Love's a Loaded Gun sing the high parts. I can pick him up clear as day. Yeah. And I also think I hear him, the hey, 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 hey on Hey Stupid. I think I can hear him there too. Yeah. So they must have been in the same studio. And they thank Alice Cooper inside the second Baton Rouge album.
Or I think they did on the first one too, I think.
And they would have come out, like, I think Hey Stupid would have come out right around the same time as this. So
right, yeah.
I'm guessing they were in the same studio at the same time. And I mean, it's not that much different. Mm-hmm. I'm used to the Alice Cooper version with Alice's vocals on it, but it's good. Like I said, it's worth picking up if you really like those first two albums. I mean, really, really like those first two albums. It's worth seeking out. Not the easiest thing to find, but it's something else to put in your Baton Rouge collection, because there really aren't. There's a like unofficial like Russian compilations.
Okay.
There's a few singles, but there's really not much else out there. The only other thing I know of that Kelly Keeling sang on, and I don't know how many tracks, but John Norum, guitarist from Europe, and he was also in Dokken, put out an album in 1995. Now I can picture the cover, but I can't remember what it's called.
And he does go on and do like Trans-Siberian Orchestra work.
Yes,
too.
that's right. That's right. And I always like when, guys in bands that didn't really break big, because that's a big gig. Like that's a good gig to land. So it's good that, he was able to stay in the music business. Now, within the last, I want to say year or so, someone started an Instagram account for Baton Rouge band. I think it might be Lance Bulin. Can't find out a lot of information. And whoever it is posted a few like old promo copies of Shake Your Soul. So I don't know if that had anything to do with the vinyl reissue of that. I don't know, but a good band that I wouldn't mind, like, they'd be the type of band that I'd like to see get back together, more or less core lineup and do an album for Frontiers Records, that kind of.
They did do a reunion show for the Rocklahoma, I think, like 15 years ago for in Oklahoma, but there was like nothing after that or anything. It was just like kind of like a one-time thing.
Right.
And so
I wonder who was in that lineup.
I don't know if it was all original or let's see. Oh yeah, it was the original lineup of Baton Rouge reunited in 2019 for Rocklahoma. So
okay, that's interesting because that's really cool because some of these bands get so fragmented.
Yeah.
It's like
there's like people.
Who are you actually going to see?
There's like people in different states everywhere. Like
well, yeah, and then you have you've got two versions. You've got two versions of LA Guns, two versions of Great White.
Brittany Fox.
There were multiple Rats.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's cool. The original lineup got back together. But yeah, this is, if it sounds, from the way we've been describing this, I hope we've done a good job of it. If it sounds like something you'd like, you'd probably like it. You should check it out.
And just to add a point to the 97 album, I never found it a physical copy, obviously. And so I never listened to it until preparation for the show, until you sent it to me. And I was actually surprised with it. I enjoyed it.
Oh, I did not like it. I certainly did not like it, but it's tough to compete with the two albums. I've been listening to for so many years, right?
Yeah,
it's not bad. It's definitely not bad. Like I said, Kelly sings really, really well. Like he's got that natural bluesy tone to his voice, and
like you said, I don't know where the songs came from, but they certainly didn't come from 1997. You know what I mean? Like the year.
I don't think so. No, they don't at all sound like that. And it's kind of a low budget sounding production.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not 100% sure that some of the tracks aren't just a drum machine, but I don't know for sure. But
it's possible.
Yeah. And I don't know about anybody else that might have this album, but for me, the first track, the beginning of it sounds like it's cut off. Like it sounds like I've lost a second or two of the opening of the song, but anyway.
Okay. Yeah, I think the one song that I took away from that album was Shelter. That was I enjoyed that.
That's another good one.
And the song after that, I can't remember what it is.
Victims of the Night.
Yes. I enjoyed those two songs back to back there. But the whole album is certainly worth a listen, especially like you said, if you're a fan of Baton Rouge. So
here's the thing too, and I should say, because it came out in 97, and that might scare some people, as well it should. They didn't go grunge. This isn't Warren. This isn't Dokken. This isn't Skid Row. They didn't do a grunge album.
Yeah, it's not Rad. It's not even, I agree with you. Because that's kind of what I was expecting. Like, I was kind of like worried a little bit. But no, this is just like straight rock kind of.
If they did, these could have been songs that could have come out on a major label album in 1993, if things had gone different.
Right.
Like, they don't sound all that different. So yeah, it's worth seeking out.
Yeah, certainly. I agree 100% with that. So, yeah, I guess that's pretty much going to wrap up our Baton Rouge talk here. Certainly, we had plenty to talk about here, but it's certainly a very good band. Like I said, it's more like if you guys don't like that kind of tongue in cheek lyric, like of like Winger, say somewhat Poison or Warrant to an extent. Baton Rouge is your band. It's like a rich man or a mature man's band.
I'm gonna say with Winger. If you like stuff that's like that, like they did on the album Pull.
Okay, yeah.
You'd probably like this. It's not. Okay, I don't think it's as good musician wise. I'm a huge Winger fan.
Oh, me too. Me too.
It's in the wheelhouse. So it's somewhere. It's some kind of weird cross between like Winger and Whitesnake, and if you like Rat, you might like this. If you like, it's got that certain. There's that bluesiness. Some of it might almost
kind of raw too, like a rawness at the same time.
Yeah. It's the productions aren't bad,
That's the thing. It's not like a sleaze metal or it's not like a sleazy rawness. It's just bare bones kind of. I don't know if
there's not a ton of reverb on it. Like it's neither the type of production that's so quote unquote perfect and clinical and everything in its place, nor is it a raw garagey production. It's just the songs are well recorded and easy to listen to.
Are you familiar with the Graveyard Train from 1993? The band.
I know the name, and I know the name. That's about all I know.
Okay, that might be the closest thing that I can think of right now that I could even compare them to Baton Rouge. And they only lasted one album, obviously, from 1993. So, guys, that's the best way I can explain it. 15 years, I couldn't explain what this band sounds like or who they sounded like in comparison. But just like your rich, mature hair metal band, I guess. That's the best way I can describe it, Tim. So,
well, yeah, and to look at it another way, it almost sounds like the work of a band that's about 10 years older than they actually are.
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah, it feels like their first album is like their third album.
Yeah, very, very accomplished.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. I like that. And certainly even after one spin of the debut album, and you will hear that as well. So
yeah,
I agree. So, all right, Tim. I think that'll pretty much wrap it up, unless you have anything else to say about the boys. Baton Rouge.
Just it's worth taking another look at this band.
It is. I 100%. I will stand behind that, and very good band. They still sound as good as when I found them 15 years ago. Still sounds just as good. I love it still. Like I'm listening to it for the first time. So yeah, guys, let us know in the comments what you think of Baton Rouge. Do you know of Baton Rouge? How would you kind of compare Baton Rouge to their counterparts from 1990? So, Tim, tell everyone where they can find you.
Thanks, sir. Tim's Final Confessions, and that'll find me on YouTube. That'll find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and I post daily, and I put episodes up weekly.
All right, Tim. Tim, I want to thank you so much for coming on the Krash Kourse Metal Show. I love talking like these underground, I guess. I mean, just stuff that flew under the radar so much, and it's just nice to know that there's someone else out there that knows this stuff as well. So, good stuff. Yeah. So, thank you, Tim, for coming on.
Pleasure.
All right, guys. Until next time, I'm Trevor Krash Knight. That's Tim Durling, and I want to thank you for watching the Krash Kourse Metal Show. Until next time, we will see you guys later.
Yeah, I wrote that. It's called I Want to Rock Your Body. And then in parentheses it says to the break of dawn.